Hello everybody, welcome to the AirsoftTech podcast episode 6. Today we're changing up just a little. We have a guest today with us, Charlie Yu of Zardichar Airsoft. I've known him for quite some time now, and he's been one of those guys who makes the MOSFETs for me that I use in most of my builds. So he's a pretty cool guy, and I'll let him introduce himself now.
Yep, so like you said, I'm Charlie, also known as Zardichar on Airsoft Mechanics and on Airsoft Society. And like you also said, I make MOSFETs and other electrical parts, along with specializing in R-hop installs and just overall gearbox teching.
So he's just going to be joining with us today on just the general format that we have, our recent builds, our review, our little short discussion / debate, and our Q&A. So without further ado, let's dig into it. So first topic is recent builds. So I can't remember who started last week, so I'm going to let Ryan start out, and then we'll go to Charlie, and then we'll go back to me.
Sounds good to me. Recently, I have done more of the same. I finished up two very, very basic customer builds. One was just a tune-up and flat hop install, and the other was the third rendition of a flat hop install, because every time I would perform the hop-up modifications for this customer, something would break and you have to come back and get it fixed. But I think this is the third time I had to supply a different chamber and completely redo everything for him because something snapped on his end. Very, very weird circumstance, but I think it's all over now. With personal guns, internals, I have a gigantic list of things I want to do, but certain parts I'm waiting for more tester review, I guess you can call it, before I buy them. And other parts I just don't have the money for right now, or I do have the money for it, but I'm trying to not spend all the money on airsoft. And external wise, I am completely redoing my DSG. If you followed me on social media or the forum, you would have noticed that I'm almost done with it. However, I've put one roadblock, and I was praying that I wouldn't be hitting any, because this was the first time I did smooth externals without having to modify anything to fit together, and I was very, very surprised. But I ordered my outer barrel from Asia. I was sent the wrong product. I got the outer barrel I wanted, but it was threaded clockwise instead of counterclockwise that I ordered, and it's too much of a hassle to return it. I don't really get any money back returning it because of the cost it will take to ship it. It's basically worth the product itself. So I am going to have to just buy another flash hider or suppressor instead of the one I have coming in the mail, or buy another outer barrel and see how that goes. That's about it for what I've been doing.
That's your 60 RPS setup,
Yeah.
right?
That was the
Internals are fine on that
That's
one.
pretty sick. I like it.
I'm working on the externals now.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as
Alright, so what about you, Charlie?
I've just been doing a lot of R-hop installs recently, but I just had a gearbox build that came in. It's pretty basic, just a tune-up, new motor, new gears. It's a BFC 417, so I guess that's a little bit out of the norm, I guess. It's still V2 based, but at least it's not just your standard M4 that is every other gun that I've teched on. And then
How is the gearbox shell on those? I've heard mixed things about that.
oh yeah, I don't really trust it with anything more than like an M140. Not even anything above an M130 in that shell, I just wouldn't trust. Especially if you're gonna run it in full auto. But for what he has it set up for is like 420 FPS with semi-auto only, so I think that'll hold up fine. Yeah. But yeah, there are tons of images.
Are you running Sorbo in that, or are you running
shells.
Faucet Washer? Or just anything?
Sorbo, radius, standard.
Okay. I was just out of curiosity, I just didn't know. I figured Sorbo,
Yeah.
but, you know.
Now, I'm just curious. They use regular M4 hop-ups still, right? The 416s? Oh, I mean 417s? Or are they
It is
different?
since it's a different gearbox. Well, obviously different gearbox shell, but the fitment is different. It's based on the V2 hop-up, but it's just slightly different.
I'm just thinking, is the design in the back different enough where like a shock transfer system wouldn't fit, for example, that might help those gearbox shells that are just inherently weak up there? I'm just trying to think of things that would like
It's
Because I'm assuming like a $15 STS is cheaper than like buying a $70 XCR shell and modding it to fit for more strength.
I'd actually have to lengthen the STS,
Okay.
but I could make one, but I just don't think that for this build specifically, it would be worth it. But I can definitely see the use in that for more powerful builds. And then, so for personal guns that I've been working on, just I took apart my super high speed DSG, the one that was running at 80 RPS, and I'm probably going to downgrade that since it was getting a little ridiculous. I was just burning out motors left and right. So that'll...
No, I have a question there. What motors were you using in that? Like, what have you burnt out in that?
ZCI, two ZCI high torques, a Matrix Godzilla, and a JG Blue.
So
Yeah.
Oh wow.
3 22 TPAs
Nice.
and a 24 TPA.
Yeah, basically. I'm probably just...
How do you like those
They're
Godzillas?
amazing. It's...
Yeah, I have one right now in a build, and it's pretty
I
sick.
just always loved Matrix motors.
I've had very mixed feelings about Matrix motors because, like, I've heard great things about them, but the two Magnums I've personally worked with, both of them have burnt out in, like, pretty standard setups. In like
Really?
two different cases. Yeah,
That's-
I was pretty shocked. So I personally stopped
Wow.
buying it was the 16 TPA Matrix motors. And I had one of them, that's a lie. One of them didn't burn out. One of them, the brush was just kind of like immediately worn down. I replaced those and it was fine. And the other one, like the armature itself, it just died. I swapped it out with an old JG Blue armature, I want to say, that I had, and it worked fine after that. But yeah, it was weird because I haven't like really heard of that being a popular thing with those motors.
It's Chinese lottery, I guess. There are bound to be some lemons. But for the price, you can't really... I don't think you can beat it.
Yeah, I haven't experienced the new Godzilla one yet, but it's like around the same price point, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth it.
And 24 TPA is perfect for so many builds.
Yeah. Like, some would argue 22 TPA is about as high as you have to go, but, I mean, 24 is pretty nice to have. I'll admit, I have a 24 TPA in this customer build right now, and it's
I have
pretty awesome.
a 28 TPA in my DSG right now, and I don't really, outside of the DSG where you can like the 28 and 22 will have a speed difference. There's not, I don't really see much of a point. Like the my trigger response on the build, like noticeably, like by me as a person, it's no different than putting in a 22 TPA in the exact same setup. So, I mean, it's kind of like, it was a debate I was having a while ago where at some point there is a TPA kind of cap where it's diminishing returns times 1,000, where it is technically it's quicker, but it's not even noticeable by the human, like our responses. And for every build, it's going to be different because every build is set up differently for different response times, different motors. But like, it's there, so I guess that's just depends.
What was the rate of fire difference?
So in the 28 TPA, I was getting about 52 rounds a second, 10 to 1 DSG. With the 22 TPA, I was getting about 58 rounds a second. So it wasn't huge, but it was like definitely there.
Yeah,
And that's also comparing two different motors, though. It was a JG Blue and an A&K high torque, so there's more than just a TPA difference.
Actually, I think A&K also gets their motors from Charlie, don't they?
Yeah,
See, I haven't been able to confirm that. That's what I believe.
I'm positive.
But when I had a long time ago, someone opened one up and counted it, and they were 28 TPA as opposed to 32. And I know Charlie gives 28 TPAs as well, right? Because aren't the SEMA high torques 28 TPA?
Our 28 TPA motors are the SEMA, the JG Blacks, and A&Ks. Now that I know, all three
Yeah,
of
so
those are 28.
it's probably the same thing as the SEMA high torque, if they source from the same place. That would be my assumption. It's probably the JG Black armature and a neocan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So, I do have some news actually. This is pretty cool. For customer builds, I got that GMP. I think it's a 653 or I think a 653 sounds better. I can't remember the name for the life of me. It's pretty good setup. I have Charlie's MOSFET in that. It's the Zardichar MicroFET. I don't have the packaging around here. Oh yeah, I do.
The Nova.
Right here. The ZC Nova Micro MOSFET for the 21st century.
Yep.
I like it. So there will be a review on that gun and the build and the MOSFET on my YouTube channel soon. Hopefully within the next couple days. Probably throw it up on Wednesday, but that'll be up then. And then another customer build I've got going is a G&G combat machine build with a retro arms like full setup on the inside. I got a retro arms gearbox shell, the newest one that isn't the split, obviously. It's got 20-to-1 ratio gears in it, Siege Tech, a BTC Chimera FET, retro arms piston, Prometheus M120, Godzilla 24 TPA motor, Prometheus barrel, and a Pro-Win hop-up chamber. So it's a pretty cool build. It's certainly an expensive one. So it'd be pretty well performing when I get it done. But the MOSFET's having a little bit of issue right now, a fitment issue with the gearbox shell and the selector plate and how that all lines up. So it won't fire full auto. But when I take it apart and I just have like the gearbox and the grip and I have it just like that to where it can cycle, I put my hand on the selector positions, and if I press the first one, it'll fire semi. Press them both down, it'll fire full auto. But when I put it inside the gun, it doesn't do that. So I'm gonna have to fix that issue and fiddle around with that and get it to work. And then the last thing I got is my Barrett build, and this one's pretty cool. I just really experimenting a lot of stuff with it, so I'm still changing stuff. But the basic setup is like Lonex gearbox shell, Lonex hop-up chamber, ZCI 715mm barrel. It's a 602. R-hopped. I'm probably going to ER hop it. And it's got an M170 spring in it, 10-to-1 ratio, SSG gears, and a 27 TPA motor. So that draws a lot of, or not really a lot, but the 10-to-1 is kind of a demanding setup for an M170 full stroke. So I'm going to downgrade or upgrade, I guess, to an 18-to-1 setup for a little bit more efficiency. So that's...
Wow, that volume ratio must be really low. 715mm.
What?
With a normal V2 and an M170.
I forgot to mention bore up kit. So
still, that only adds 4%.
Yeah.
Wait, how long's your barrel?
715mm.
Fuck.
So I chroned it, and after resolving some gearbox misalignment issues in the receiver, which you wouldn't think a Barrett would have, which is so dumb, it chroned at 410. And I'm like, really? 410 FPS. So there's a Lonex tappet plate in there right now, and I hate those tappet plates with a passion. Every time I make a build, I always at least try to use their tappet plates, because as well built as they are, they're designed horribly. So I really like the material they make them out of, so I was like, I'm going to give you a shot, because I've had some work and some not. So I'm going to go back into it, replace it with an SHS tappet plate, and trim a coil down or two, and replace the gears with 18-to-1. And if I'm still getting low FPS, then I'm going to have to do some other work to it.
I have, just as like a point of reference, in my SR25 that has the extended cylinder, I only run a 455 barrel in that.
Jeez.
And it's a ZCI one too, so it's 6.02. Like, I have enough volume to run longer, but I run 0.43 grams in a 455.
I'm honestly thinking...
Sorry,
Charlie.
It's 1.25. I just calculated what it is. It's 1.25 ratio.
Oh, in
which is definitely suboptimal.
in mine or in
Mine.
Ryan's? Okay, I was gonna say.
That's really bad.
Yeah, usually isn't 1.7 to 2 is like the optimal unless you are trying to get it higher than that.
You want it a little bit higher, like not a little bit, but a good amount higher.
Well, it depends on the spring that you're using, and it depends on the
I'm gonna try to aim to use 0.43s
on the BB weight.
Obviously, the heavier the BB, the more volume you need. So.
Yeah, you want a 2.2 ratio for around 500.
That's gonna be really hard to do.
So
you're way under, Ryan.
Yeah, my bad.
barrel cutting time.
I'm gonna.
At least it'll be quiet.
Yeah.
Silent
Well,
sniper, silence.
Yeah, okay, so I'm thinking about now cutting down the outer barrel, because this thing, okay, 715 millimeters, it's not even as long as it needs to be, okay? It's still 100 millimeters short.
Oh wow.
Alright, just because the length is there doesn't mean you have to fill it, though, with the inner.
I know, but, like, if you could have it banging around, too, on the inside
But I
there.
want to, but I want to.
So I'm probably going to
Just
cut down
space
both
it.
the inner and the outer.
How's the outer on the barrack? Can you not space it?
It has a huge outer, like the outer barrel has a ton of space on the inside of it, so I really need to. I'm also thinking about cutting it down because this thing weighs like 20 pounds, and the outer barrel is a lot of that weight. So, and plus my voluming ratio is way down.
How much space is between the outer barrel and the inner barrel?
Not a whole lot. I'm trying to think without taking it apart. See, it actually goes down. It's a lot towards the rear. If I remember correctly, it's a lot towards like where you put the hop-up unit in first, and then it gets smaller as you get closer to the end, I think. That's like my quick glance at it, I think. I'll have to double check and get that back to you. So, but
you still probably get turbulence effects if you kept it short.
Anyway, I need to work on that. It's just like I got it for really cheap, so I was like, why not? And I had half the parts to actually make the build. The only parts I bought was the shell, the hop-up unit, and the barrel. I think I had everything else.
You definitely bought it just to say you owned a Barrett.
Yeah, basically. I was just like, I own a...
I'm not saying I wouldn't have done that either.
I was like, I own a Barrett now. Your argument is pretty invalid. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But the spare mags were like $40 a piece, so I'm not running spare mags now. That's not going to happen.
Aren't those Barrett mags, is that the Snow Wolf Barrett?
Yeah, Snow Wolf. It takes GMP
I think
VN mags.
they're just like the M16 VN mags. Yeah, they're M16 VN mags in a really cool looking shell.
Whoever designed that was a genius. They just took a Barrett mag and they're like, hey, let's just put
They
this
literally hauled it out
common
and just
M4
fit the
magazine
VN
right
mag
into
in.
it.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it's such a good design. Like, whoever thought of that was just a genius. But, alright, let's move on from our recent builds, unless you guys have anything else to say. Hey. Alright.
Probably not.
We can always branch back to it a little bit. Okay, so, this is up to you, Ryan. This was, you picked a brand review this time, right?
Oh. Yeah, what were we doing? About that.
Picked a brand review for
That
Lonex,
was
man.
great. I think that's what we decided to do, right? The Lonex one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So, we wanted to... I know before we had been doing, like... Yeah, I remember this now. We talked about this. We wanted to do product reviews every single podcast. But Ryan and I thought this time we could do a more general, like, brand review because we were kind of talking about it. And Lonex kept coming up a lot in communities and Q&A forums, and one of the things is because when they first came out, they were really, really hyped up. And I'm not saying if it was overhyped or not, but they just had a lot of hype behind them. A lot of people were buying the products, praising the products. A lot of people said Lonex was the new airsoft god because they were just better than SHS, and there's just things that were being said. And as time went on, it turned into hate, and then it turned back into everyone loves them again, and now it's kind of mixed. And I know initially people would talk as if there were no problems at all with any Lonex product that was made, and that's just not necessarily saying it was true then, but it's definitely not true now, especially after they go through different generations of products and they edit some of them and they change others. So for example, I think Ryan and I already talked about the Lonex Red Pistons in our 2 podcasts ago, I believe.
Something like
yeah,
that.
which are great, and they're great pistons. They have their purpose, and they fit their purpose very, very nicely for the price. But then we also brought up in the same podcast about, I think I mentioned the Lonex Blue pistons. I absolutely hate them because every build I've used them in, they strip really, really easily. And what basically the Lonex Blue is it's supposed to be a lighter version of the red, but whether they use slightly different material to lighten it down or they just made a less dense mold for the piston, whatever they changed in the blue to make it the lighter version of the red, the structural integrity of the piston just went down the crapper because it is not as strong really as the red is, because teeth strip out insanely quickly every time I try to use them. So that's just one example of
Yeah, I've
thing,
experienced the
yeah.
exact
So it's
same
just an
thing.
example of things where doing a brand review is different than just doing a part review because Lonex red pistons, I love them. Lonex blue pistons, I hate them, and they're still both Lonex. So it's not like they're getting everything right. Another popular topic is the gearbox shells lately because they recently changed the gearbox shell design. My DSG still runs on an original Lonex version 2 gearbox that I bought like a year and a half, 2 years ago almost, and absolutely no problems with it at all. I still run it fine. I still love it. It fits into bodies without modification for the most part that are like TM spec bodies. Like for example, I bought a new GMP receiver set and it fit in without zero fitment issues or modification or shimming or anything. It just dropped right in. I almost cried. I was so happy. And then, however, I have a customer. I bought him. Well, he bought and provided a newer generation Lonex gearbox shell, and the visual differences, at least the big one, is that they don't have the window ports in the back anymore. It's just a solid piece. And
I hate that so much.
I think someone else told me they're also not shiny anymore, and I know that's not true because I own one.
They're not.
But that's what I'm saying is that this must be a third generation now because I know there was an interim period where they were still very shiny, and I actually have one. I had one with me yesterday before the customer picked the gun up. It was extremely shiny. It just didn't have the back ports anymore. And then on the forums, and then you just confirmed the newest ones aren't shiny anymore either. So it signifies that they've gone through at least 3 different stages of the gearbox shells. And what I was getting at is the second generation, which is the one I had, and the customer gun, it literally came concavely bent. The 2 halves of the shells did not fit together.
Oh, wow.
There was a gap in the center in both of them. So that was a big issue that I had to work out as best as I could to get the shell to be used because the customer spent $50 on it and didn't have the money to buy another one. But again, it's a quality control issue where previously in the shells it was not there, and now all of a sudden it's there. And I guess the third topic about Lonex, the really big products that they sell all the time, their motors. And their motors are a big controversial topic because everyone loved them at first, and then everyone hated them, and now some people love them, some people hate them, and some people love parts about them but hate other parts about them. And I feel like I've been talking forever, so I'll let Charlie and Ryan take it on any one of the 3 things that were brought up or something else they think of.
I'll let Charlie go before me. I want to hear what he has to say about some things.
For the gearbox shells, I know that the very first generation that they had actually didn't have the back port either.
Oh, okay. So that means there's been at least 4 changes in the system.
Yeah. And then as for it not being shiny, that's very strange because they wouldn't have changed materials without releasing a different product. The only thing I can think to explain the warping plus that is that they just had a bad batch that wasn't heat treated.
Well, because with mine, the one that was warped was still shiny. It was still like the advertised 3rd generation one where it was after the ones with the ports they changed over to no ports, but they looked the same. They just had physical changes, but this one just came warped. And then after that, I heard someone on the forums tell me, I guess Ryan just confirmed it, that they're not even shiny anymore. So like the finish on them is completely different, meaning there must be at least a 4th rendition. And I know the Lonex stock gearboxes, they're OEMing for companies, are not those are dull and not shiny, and those are not the same ones they sell as aftermarket. And I knew that already.
Yeah.
So are people getting those mixed up?
It's unfortunate that the aftermarket ones aren't good because the aftermarket ones, they were by far the best gearbox shell that was on the market, even better than most of the CNC'd ones.
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone break
one person break a Lonex shell, and he was running an M190 9-tooth DSG. And that was the only time I've ever seen one. It cracked right up in the front, like a normal break from a piston or a spring. But that was the only time I've ever even seen a picture of like a cracked Lonex shell.
Yeah, I know someone who ran it.
I know someone who ran it with a spaced M210, and it didn't break. So.
Yeah, I have gone through a lot of Lonex gearboxes. Not like broken, but I've had my hands on a lot. The generation that Ryan's talking about, the one he has in his DSG, that has the ports in the back and it's shiny. I have one of those that I broke in my DSG setup. Now, it wasn't a break in the front, it was a break in the rear. The reason is because of that I tried to do a quick change spring modification, and I was like, huh, this works out pretty cool. I was running an M170, so I was like, hey, I'll bump it up to an M190. So I did, and it immediately shot out the back, and I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. And so I quickly dropped it into a D-Boy shell I had, put an M170 in it, and then my DSG ran from there. But that's the only Lonex shell I have ever broken personally, and it was due to my own fault. That's not the shell's fault that I put a quick change spring modification into it. So I kind of went past the boundaries of that gearbox shell. But I've never broken one up front, and I've ran, I think the most I've ever ran in one was a full stroke M170 with bearings on both sides, and so that's decently stressful. And that was just a DMR set. That wasn't like a full auto, constant running, regular setup. But yeah, I've been through a lot of Lonex gearboxes because the one I have is one with the ports that's shiny. Then the one I have in my Barrett has no ports. It's not shiny, but it still has the same color. It's not dull, but it still has the same color, but it's certainly not shiny. And then I went to get that Lonex gearbox shell that was dull, but it was still thick like the others. So it was really weird. They've really done some weird stuff with their gearbox shells, so I'm not sure what to expect whenever I order one anymore. Because I'll get one and it'll be warped and stuff. So it's weird.
Where did you buy them from?
Brill.
All of them?
Not every single one I've ever bought, but recently I've bought most of my parts from Brill. So I've gotten 2 Lonex gearbox shells that were warped from him, but I fixed them. I did the best I could to fix them because he can't guarantee ACM lottery, or Lonex isn't truly true ACM, but because they have a little bit of a Q.
Well, they're made in Taiwan, right? So it's technically not
Taiwan.
ACM.
Yes, Taiwan.
Oh, I thought
China
wouldn't fit.
Okay.
It's just poor QC all of a sudden, which sucks because I used to.
I put it into a pair of vice grips and it fixed it, but I make sure there's absolutely no cylinder head fitment issues or cylinder fitment issues that can cause any more unneeded stress, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's just because I do know that the Lonex gearbox shells that they make for the OEM companies, they make the FMG4 line for Airsoft GI. They're now making Lancer Tacticals, higher end AEGs. They make and market their own AEGs under their own name now too, and those all have the Lonex gearbox shell, but it's a really dull version. So I wonder if they're now selling those OEM'd boxes instead of the old ones, because that would explain the dullness. Or if maybe they're just not treating them all the same way, and they're treating them the same way as the OEM boxes. I really don't know what they're doing, but that's
they've just...
The OEMs are zinc alloy. They're not aluminum like these.
I know.
Aftermarket.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that maybe, just maybe, because I haven't worked on FMG4. Maybe they were just taking, they had a bunch of FMG4 gearbox shells and these are the same as our other ones. Let's just slap them in the box and sell them under the traditional upgrade part. But yeah, since Charlie says they're not the aluminum zinc combination, that they're just solid zinc, then
because
that kind of disproves that.
Their other products are the aluminums. No, they're zinc. Their hop-ups are just all zinc, but they still have the same finish as the gearbox shell. So they might just be changing the finish on them too to save money. I really don't know, because I haven't been able to break one open and look at it and compare it.
Somebody needs to actually do some testing on this, metal testing, and see what they get. Because I'm really curious.
Wish I had the money to just spend on 2 gearboxes to break them.
But what do you guys think about Lonex motors nowadays?
It's overpriced.
I still like them.
I agree.
However, I don't spend the money on them unless everything else is out of stock.
Exactly. I'd rather get a Matrix motor and use that instead of spending the extra $20 on a Lonex motor. It's just not worth it.
I know. So the DSG that I built for my brother about probably 2 years ago now, it still has a Lonex A2 in it that I haven't had to service at all, and it's still running fine. And I'm very surprisingly, I've seen no pinion wear either, which is weird because Lonex. Did they change the pinion material recently? Because I know they used to have really soft pinions.
No.
They did?
Yes,
okay.
They did.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I have a new enough motor with the new pinion material. However, I did notice that in this specific one, I've had absolutely no pinion wear after almost 2 years in a DSG, and I know that is uncharacteristic for the old Lonex.
I've actually never had to replace them, like, due to, like, okay, so I've used a lot of Lonex motors, a lot. I used to use them all the time when they were, like, the stuff everybody bought, and so I almost never replaced the pinions on them, except a couple times where I was told, like, you need to do this, because that's when I first started teching, and so I was like, okay, I'll replace the pinion gear. But I ran one in my DSG for like the longest time, like the Lonex pinion itself, and it didn't break. Like it doesn't break out or wear down to a point where it's not gonna work. It looked brand new still. So
maybe it might just.
But
be
yeah, I
the,
agree. Lonex motors.
The meshing with other gears could cause it to wear down. Maybe that's what we were.
Yeah, but I agree with Charlie. I think Lonex motors are nowadays completely overpriced. Back when like they were like the only motor you could buy, not like the only motor you could buy, but like the only reliable motor you could buy because SHS was having tons of lemons and ZCI wasn't a thing, and they're pretty awful.
Both brands still have a million lemons. Hasn't changed.
So
yeah,
but I've shied away from using Lonex motors. I've used a lot of ZCI, SHS, and a few Matrix recently, but I can just get other motors that are either better or cheaper. Or better and cheaper. So
I know. Have you had experience with the newer SHS high torques that are supposed to still be 16 TPA? Because I haven't bought one in a long time.
They are 16
I know.
TPA.
I haven't bought one in a long time. I don't know what else they changed because they change generations on these pretty frequently now. It's annoying.
I bought one recently, and Corey bought one as well, and because he was getting tired of everybody saying they were all like 22 TPA, and so somebody would say they were 22, another person would say they were 16, and they just get into an argument.
I saw his picture where he cut one open and proved they were still 16.
So yeah, he cut one open, they were 16 TPA, I bought one, dropped into my M16. Yeah, they're pretty much the same, because I bought one, dropped into my M16, and it shot, just like a 16 TPA. So,
okay. Yeah. And I did check my JG Red like you told me to, and it is the original metal end bell actual JG Red and not the newer JG Blue with a red end bell.
So it's 16 TPA?
Yeah, it's 16 TPA. Cool. So that'll be fun to experiment with.
Yeah. So anything we want to drop into Lonex as well?
I guess with my just kind of final experience is that as the company has gained popularity, the quality control went down, and they changed generations on products. And because of the combination of the two, whenever you make a new product or change a product with worse quality control than before, it never turns out as well as the original. And I think that's what we're seeing with Lonex right now in some of their products. So I'm hoping they can turn that around.
Yeah. Their compression products are completely my go-tos. Have been for 2 or 3 years now. I mean, there's nothing that can beat it for the price. But as for some of their mechanical parts, the gears I don't like, the motor cages I don't like, some of the externals I don't like, and apparently now the gearbox shells aren't great either. Spring guide is overpriced. But
Spring guide is way overpriced in those things.
I still buy super shooters.
Yeah.
Those have been my go-to for the price. And if they do break, I just buy another one.
Yep.
This is kind of how I've coped with buying those.
There's.
I still have one of the ZCI aluminum spring guides that everyone said were terrible.
Oh really? Because I ran those too, and I was a defender of those. I was like, these never break. What are you guys talking about? And then I had 2 of them snap on me within like a month.
It's still running in my DSG. Has been for like at least 50,000 rounds.
Oh, good for you. Try to keep it in there then. I have one left that hasn't broken, but
it's
I bought
probably
like
broken. It's just like hanging in there.
1 for 4.
Against the compression of the spring.
The tabs are all the way bent forward. I just haven't opened it up yet, so I can't.
I bought one ZCI spring guide, and I used it in a customer build that was like a stock build. I was just like, because it was a G&G combat machine, and it had the plastic spring guide in it that was about to fail. It just was getting mauled up like crazy. And so I was like, okay, I'll replace this, the piston, and the spring, and get it up to where he wants it. And so I did that, and I got it in the mail, and I'm just like, this thing feels like a piece of crap. And it really feels really junky. It feels horrible. But because it's so lightweight, it's so rickety feeling, and it's so rough. And so I just put it in, and it ran fine, but, it's like a 15 RPS build, so I can't really say much about it. But all right, so that's our brand review for Lonex. Just talking about it a little bit, our experiences with it. We've basically come to a consensus that a lot of their parts are, like their motors are overpriced. It's just not something we go to because we can get something that's better or cheaper or better and cheaper. And then they make parts like their compression parts, which are fantastic. They've been like a benchmark to us. So like their hop-up buckings and their piston heads and their air nozzles and cylinder heads are fantastic for the price. I love them, honestly. And then other stuff like their gearbox shells are just weird. You can get one that's warped, or you can get one that's like different looking and just all kinds of other weird stuff. So that's basically our general consensus though. So all right, so now we're going to move into a short discussion / debate about a topic that I think is relatively controversial. Maybe controversial isn't the right word to use, and then we'll flesh it out later. But this topic is the plastic pickup teeth debate versus the metal pickup tooth debate. And so this is referring to when you use a piston, you can either go one of two materials for the rack, the teeth, metal or plastic. So when you go plastic, you have either, majority of the teeth plastic or half of them plastic or a couple plastic, and the plastic ones are towards the pickup side where the sector gear pickup's on. Now, they can also be steel, which, some people argue is better. And then some people argue that the plastic pickup teeth idea and concept is just better than the steel one. And so we're going to see where everybody stands on that today. I'll let Charlie start out on this one.
I think that for the majority of builds, plastic is going to be better, but obviously you have to also consider that the only viable options are really the SHS, the SHS piston that's on the market, the 15-tooth blue one, and then you have the Lonex red. And obviously the Lonex red is 2.5 times more expensive, so you have to take that into account with the debate. But where I stand is that for most builds, you can get away with the SHS 15-tooth. I personally usually don't because of the quality control issues that they've had.
Mm-hmm.
But for very specialized builds, I greatly prefer the Lonex red.
Okay. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, so I agree with Charlie for the most part. I mean, I feel like, where my specialty is high rate of fire AEGs. A lot of the times if people want me to do tech work, it's because they want a higher rate of fire or what they think is a high rate of fire. So I usually default to an SHS 15-tooth piston because it's just, it's what I'm comfortable with. It's a lot cheaper. It's easier to last longer. However, I do notice a lot of QC issues, and the big issue I notice with those pistons is that while the pickup tooth itself is metal, and I've never actually seen that really break often, the pickup support is really weak on those pistons. So what I've actually had happen to myself, even not even a customer build, like my own gun, the sector gear goes to the piston, it meets the pickup tooth, and it just rips the rack out of the piston, and the entire back of the piston will break, basically, because there is not enough support behind the metal pickup tooth. And what the advantage of having a plastic pickup tooth would be is that the pickup tooth is molded into the piston itself, so it naturally has a much, much, much higher standard for support to avoid that fault happening.
Yeah.
I guess that was probably my 2 cents on it. I still usually use the SHS 15 tooths. However, that is a fault that should be known with them, is that the pickup support sucks.
Mm-hmm. So where I stand on this is a lot of it is based on my luck in the ACM lottery. I've just noticed I have really, really good luck. And so personally, I do a lot of high rate of fire builds more than I do like DMR builds and stuff to that effect. I'm normally doing stuff in the 30, 40, sometimes 50 RPS setups. So I'm rarely doing a DMR build. So typically I go with the SHS piston, and I go for it for several reasons. Charlie mentioned the price tag. The Lonex piston is like 2.5 times, like he said, more expensive than the SHS piston. So that can be taken into account. So somebody looking on a website, they see the SHS piston, and they're like, oh, $10, steel rack, that seems pretty good. They look at the Lonex piston, half, or not half, I think it's like 1/3 third of it is plastic, and then the other 2/3 is metal. And
I
so
think
look
they have
at
10 steel teeth, and then roughly 6 plastic one, if I remember right.
I can never remember stuff like that, so your guess is as good as mine. But
well, technically it's 4 plastic teeth. 4 plastic teeth. You have the pickup tooth. You have the missing tooth for AOE, and then you have the 10 metal
And then the
teeth.
missing tooth, which would be the last one.
Alright, I see. Okay, so there we have a factual proof there. So somebody looking at it, they see a $20-something piston, they see a $10 piston, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go with the $10 one. I almost always go with the SHS piston because I've hardly had a problem with it. I always take the racks out and I super glue them down or I epoxy them down. Both have worked pretty well for me. I always dry the surface really well, like wash it with soap and water, dry it off, glue it down, and it stays, and it doesn't come off without a lot of force. And I've used them in DSGs, like I run an no, I don't run an SHS one. I have DSG. I used to. It was an M170 DSG at 60 RPS, and it ran pretty fine for around 20,000 rounds, and I changed it up. So usually when I just pick up a piston, I go with the SHS piston because I've never really had a huge problem with it. And when I do, it's almost always my fault where I do some weight reduction around the pickup tooth and around the rack support, and that's a bad idea if you do too much or if you do it in the wrong spots. And so it'll break away pretty easily. Like I've got one here where I've put small little holes around the pickup tooth support area, and it cracked and it created this like V breakaway where the rack just broke out. And so that was kind of my fault, I would say. But you can do that with a Lonex piston and be fine. So that's kind of the thing there. But if I'm doing something like a DMR or something else that I really need a reliable piston, then I'll certainly go Lonex. But for most high speeds, I go SHS piston. So that's my take.
Yeah. Well, I mean, theoretically, the problem with metal tooth pistons, or at least on the pickup side, is that if you hit even minor premature engagement, if it doesn't damage the teeth like it would just the plastic teeth, and you can continue to run it after you clean it out. With the metal teeth, it'll just jam the gear, and you're gonna end up stripping the top of the step gear.
Yeah, that's something that I'm glad somebody brought up. That's an issue too.
So that was something Ryan and I talked about, I think, again, 2 podcasts ago, was a lot of techs like to use plastic tooth pistons as a failure point in their setups as opposed to having metal tooth pistons because of that fault. And we already talked a little bit about that and like our own opinions on that. But just to recap mine is that I realize the fault is there and it's a legitimate concern to have. However, I will usually I know that, and I still use the metal tooth piston because durability wise it is there, and unless I'm hitting a compression jam, I don't build guns that are going to have anywhere near PME, especially for a customer. If it's for a customer, I'm building it safe. So unless it's legitimately something I looked over and I built wrong, or I hit a compression jam because the customer was fiddling with something, he got a BB stuck in the barrel, and he just kept pulling my trigger. Well, at that point, it's kind of incompetence that's causing it and killing the gun rather than the gun killing itself, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
However, there are times where maybe you're playing a game and dirt gets in your barrel, or something clogs up a BB, and if you switch to full auto really quickly, you will hit PME, and your piston has like a 50-50 chance of stripping. It depends completely on the setup, or it can destroy either your sector, or it can cause your sector to destroy the step gear, and that is legitimate.
Or
concern.
you can have this happened to me. I hit PME on an SHS 12-1 gear set, and I don't know how. I think it was more of a compression jam or some fluke, because I wasn't gonna hit PME mathematically. It just wasn't happening. I wasn't going fast enough. So it broke the bevel gear of all things. Didn't even scratch the piston or sector or spur. So just really weird ACM lottery, stupid stuff. So oh well.
Yeah.
But that's off topic, really.
I definitely hit that problem with my 80 RPS DSG, because I was using the retro arms, the full metal tooth one, and that, I have to say, that piston is incredible. That is probably the best piston on the market right now.
I love it.
If you're looking for a metal tooth piston, it's simply amazing. It's so light, the teeth are so strong, but obviously it backfired because the teeth were too strong, and I ended up stripping siege techs.
No way,
Yeah,
really?
hit PME at 80 RPS.
That's the
Did you strip the sector
Top of
teeth
the
or
spur.
the step gear? That's
Ooh.
Step.
damn. That's.
Yeah.
I'm just out of pure curiosity. What did Riot do about that? Did you tell him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, premature engagement's not covered under warranty. That's my fault.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just curious to see what he responded. To see that, like.
Did you tell him what happened at all?
No, I just told him I hit PME and then I wanted to buy new step gear.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were like, yeah, the retro arms piston didn't take a scratch and your step gear just destroyed.
You broke your gears.
No. I mean, obviously it has a lot more angular momentum compared to how much energy it has with the linear motion of the piston, but
Not sure what was I gonna say. I was gonna say
yeah,
something.
M170 spring, not enough.
You ran a 9-tooth, right?
No, that was 8-tooth.
Oh, really?
Oh god, 9-tooth.
A 9-tooth would have really hit.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
That would have been like a suicide mission putting that together.
Yeah, I saw a build on the Facebook page. Somebody running a 9-tooth DSG setup at 60 RPS on an M170 spring.
Well, that's pushing it. I ran that for a while.
It was 14.8, 10-1, 32 TPA, 9-tooth.
I plan to run a 9-tooth setup soon, but probably like 50 RPS, not at 60 though.
9-tooth is so easy to get FPS out of. It's amazing.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm trying to build a field gun as a DSG just to say that I have it to scare people.
Yeah. I got 390 FPS with a .2 out of an M150 spring and a 9-tooth.
Oh, are you kidding?
No.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. It's gonna fit my goal perfectly.
Yeah. It was in G36.
That's great.
It was the best compression I've ever had.
I'm changing my SCAR up again and bringing that old gun back into action. I'm trying to build a field DSG because every time I bring my DSG out to... I don't play field very often, so when I go, I usually bring my DSG out for one game because no one there knows what the hell it is. So they hear it go off. I was playing the other day, and we end the game. There's like a mini town at the local field I go to, and they end the day. They always just do small CQB type games in the town. So I bring it for that, and I shot it in full auto once. I kid you not. All 17 heads of people in the game, they stopped, they stood up, and they looked at me, and then someone broke the silence and said, "What the fuck was that?" And they had no idea what. They just haven't even heard of the concept before. It was so funny.
Yeah, surprisingly, I ran my DSG at a game once, and it was I think it was 50 RPS, it was 16 TPA, 18-1 DSG, and I was just running it at the game, and surprisingly, nobody was surprised that I was running a DSG. It was kind of weird. They were all running Polar Stars though, so I guess they were just cough cough inferiority kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to go because I have an SMP now too. So I want to go and run my DSG, but glue a little piece of macro line up the bottom of the grip. Just put it in a backpack and just see if anyone questions to say, that Polar Star sounds weird.
You got some weird, did you shim your Polar Star right?
Yeah.
Alright,
I actually don't think I've run my DSG at a field. Or in front of actually played with the DSG. It's a little depressing. I should get it out there at least once with 80 RPS.
That's really sad, Charlie.
Yeah, because I used my FMG4 primary at fields, and I just used
now
it
for
CQB.
You have a 10-1 siege tech set in that, right? SSG. Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, 10 to 1 SSG with.
I know. I saw
Matrix Magnum.
Yeah, I saw one of the videos you posted on that, or maybe it was a post on the forum somewhere, a long time ago, and then I never saw you talk about it again once, because it's always about your DSGs.
Yeah, I mean it's not extremely, it's a very, very balanced build. It has an ER hop, reaches out to 300 feet. It's not DMR range, and the RPS is 35, so it's just very in the middle, but very, very good for field.
Yeah, that's what you.
Yeah.
Alright, so we'll move on to our next topic. This is our last topic. So This is the topic where we take a question that we're commonly asked, or just something that has just been bugging us about, like somebody asking us a bunch of questions, and we're going to answer it. So we're each going to go around the clock on this one, and so I'll start out first on this one. So this question, I personally probably don't. I'm not the only one who gets this question. I'm willing to bet. It's been on the Facebook page, the Facebook forums, and actual forums like Airsoft Society a lot. And that question is, how do you build an AEG to be quiet, like just silent? For some reason, that's been a question recently, like a lot. So I'm gonna answer that. I don't know why. Okay, so first off, I'm gonna say I don't know why everybody's been asked this question. It's kind of just weird for it to like come out as a fad, but it's a question, so I'm gonna answer it. But my take on it is, you can make your AEG silent by doing a lot of stuff. So the first step you want to do is make everything mechanically as perfect as possible, like shimming, angle of engagement, all that stuff, because perfect shimming is quieter than horrible shimming. If you turn up your motor height really, really fast just right now and take a couple bursts off of it, you'll notice it's really loud. And if you bring it back down to where it's perfect, it'll sound much better. So perfect shimming and like the mechanics going perfect is the first thing you want to do. Second thing you want to do is run some soft sorbothane or just sorbothane in general. If you want to be really quiet, you run it really soft, like 50 degree or 40 degree sorbo, not 70 degree or 90 degree. You just run, the soft you can get. So also, if you run stuttering for a second, a weaker spring like an M90 or an M100, don't use an M90, but like an M100 is perfectly fine. You can run something really with a weak spring, and it doesn't hit the gearbox shell as hard up front. Another thing you can do is you can undervolume your system. Now, if you undervolume your system, you're going to run into some problems. You're going to get lower FPS to begin with, and so that'll be a thing, but your accuracy will be a little better, and the sound will drop a lot, so it won't be as loud at all. If you take an overvolume system, like I had an overvolume G36 a while back, and it shot really loud, and then once I volumed it back to where it was supposed to be, the proper ratio, it wasn't as loud anymore. Granted, it wasn't as terrifying, but it wasn't as loud. So that's how that works. If you undervolume a system, it'll be quieter because all the air in that barrel isn't smacking out and hitting your flash hider or your amplifier. If you're going to run an amplifier and try to make a quiet build, I don't know what you're doing, but it's going to be quieter because you don't have as much air flowing through the system and banging out, and so that's a thing. So if you run all this setup, and this is like the basic stuff you can do, there's probably really advanced stuff you can do that would be like experimental almost that you can do to make your AEG super quiet. But if you hit those general topics right there and do all that stuff right and make sure all of your shimming and stuff's on point, then you're going to get a pretty quiet system. Also, one more thing, you can actually make your system cycle quicker, and that eliminates gear noise and stuff to that effect. So it'll be more quiet per shot, but if you get like a really heavy burst at like 30 RPS, of course it's going to be louder than like a gun that's firing 20 RPS. So that's a question that's been bugging me a lot, and I'm just going to answer it.
Yeah, if I can add on to that a little bit, which you might have actually said it, I might have just missed it, but I know adding sorbo is a really easy way. It's shock absorbent, which means the sound that comes off of the piston head hitting the sorbothane will be much, much, much quieter than hitting a faucet washer or the stock buffer on your cylinder head. And then running a plastic tooth piston, not to drag another old conversation into this, but it will actually eliminate any gear noise between the sector and the piston. Not that there's a lot, but I mean, if you're trying to go as quiet as possible, you might get to a point where all you hear is gear noise. Then going down and eliminating as much as that as possible will help. And to the same effect, using a softer metal composition of a pinion gear to the bevel gear, for example, like the really, really old Lonex motors, that actually will muffle any sound that comes between the meshing of those two gears as well. Granted, if you have perfect shimming, perfect motor height, etc., there really shouldn't be any sound there anyway. However, it is something that you can do that will help out a little bit.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot about that completely. You can run, because I remember if you get a Lonex, like the old Lonex pinions, and you run them like a well meshing bevel gear, it sounds beautiful. Totally forgot about that.
Also, I'd like to add a couple things to that. If you have a gun that's not an M4, you can actually add acoustic foam on the inside of the gun. I did that with a P90, and it was dead silent.
Nice.
And then foam a foam-filled suppressor, although
Oh
not
yeah,
technically legal.
Technically,
It will definitely
even though I
help
own
with
like 4.
any muffling sounds. And the other thing, oh shoot, what was the? Oh yeah, plastic bodies instead of metal bodies really cut down on the noise.
Really?
Oh, and bearings. Bearings versus bushings. Bearings are much quieter.
I don't like to use them too much. The GMP, Magic Box, and modified bearings I'll use in builds. Other than that, I really stay away from them.
See, I was gonna mention the bearings, but personally, I've never really found a difference in the sound. Like, I know if you like take them, you spin them there, they make a lot of sound difference. Like, if you take like a gearbox shell that has like the gear shimmed in it, and you have one that has bushings, one that has bearings, and all your variables are taken into account, and you spin both of them, like right there, raw in front of you, the one with bushings is gonna sound louder because it zips and it scrapes more. But like in the normal functioning of AEG, I've never noticed that it makes a significant sound difference. Like that's just my.
When I was trying to get my P90 as dead silent as possible, it was very slight, but you could definitely hear a difference.
All right, wait, what bearings were you running? Because in a P90, you must have reamed out the holes for it, or done something to run bigger bearings. Or were you just running 7mm?
Yeah, I mean, I had access to a mill.
Oh, okay.
So I had access to a mill, so I could do that. And then that was just with GMP bearings, with SiegeTech gears, and then put acoustic foam in it, added some venting holes, and then added lots of other things to make it as quiet as possible. Foam-filled suppressor.
Yeah, I totally forgot about the foam-filled suppressor, though. That completely blew over me. That's a good point,
if you're undervoluming your setup in the first place, the foam-filled suppressor won't really do too much. But if you don't want to undervolume your setup, because that does compromise FPS, then the foam-filled suppressor will help at least a little bit.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of making a quiet build.
It decreases accuracy.
Hmm?
The foam-filled suppressor adds a little bit of muzzle turbulence at the end, so you get some weird air effects that bounces the BB around slightly.
That's one of the reasons why I don't personally run suppressors either. Like, none of my guns have suppressors. I used to run one, and then I noticed the turbulence issues. Like, I ran one of my P90 for the longest time, and that was like a 30 RPS setup. And I was like, oh, I want super good accuracy out of this. And then I slapped a suppressor on it, and I noticed, a mock suppressor, and I noticed that it had a significant accuracy deficiency as a result of the suppressor.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I don't do anymore.
I think I run suppressors on every single personal gun I own, -1, because I like the look of it, and that's really the only reason I have.
Maybe some Milsim games, like, you gotta have one, so that's your excuse, but shame on you.
Well, I mean, when you have field rifles shooting past 275 feet and doesn't even compare to anyone else you play with, I don't mind taking a little accuracy deficiency and throwing a suppressor on there.
Was that with the SMP?
Yeah, so my SMP, I actually like it a lot. That one shoots roughly, on a standard R-hop patch, I'm getting well beyond 275 feet. Not pinpoint accuracy, but like 8 out of 10 man-sized target at roughly just before 300 feet. With a standard, like a Mad Bull 6.03, 455, and a regular R-hop patch. Like, I personally am pretty shot. I 0.3.
Alright, Ryan, do you have a question you want to answer?
Yeah, so I had a question. It's a little outside of the standard teching realm, and I was talking about it today on Facebook and the forum a little bit, because I got PMs from a couple people, and I just noticed a lot of threads popping up, mostly on Facebook, but about the whole HPA issues and banning them recently, and how they're different from AEGs, for example, or gas blowbacks. And I guess I wanted to weigh in my opinion on more and more fields, mostly over in California, but other parts of the country now too, just outright banning HPA because they don't know how to properly chrono them. And I guess the nature of the argument is that there's going to be cheaters in any sport or hobby you partake in, no matter what. It's always been that way. It always will be that way. That's just how some people think. It's some people's mentality. And whether that cheating in airsoft is not calling hits or using a gun that's outside the chrono limits or going out of bounds in the field, there's always going to be someone who does it.
Yeah.
And specifically on like changing your gun specs to above the chrono limits on the field, it's not that only HPA users do that, but naturally in the design of the system, it's much, much, much easier for HPA users to do that and to change their system after chrono, for example, or to take advantage of refs that don't know how to properly chrono them, and they will purposely chrono with 0.2 gram BBs, for example, and then go play with 0.36 gram BBs, and to the refs who don't know anything about HPA guns or joule creep or how the system works, they have no idea that someone's actually running over the joule limit, or what they would be FPS limit, what should be a joule limit of the field. And I guess my take on it is that fields that are just outright banning the HPA guns and systems, that's kind of the easy way out. To me, it's their way of saying we are too lazy to actually learn how these guns differ from AEGs and what we're used to, and why it's easier to take advantage of these guns and why it's easier to cheat with them. And instead of learning about that and updating our field's rules to accommodate that for the different system, we're just going to ban them outright. And I mean, there's steps you have to follow and stuff you have to know to properly chrono these guns. And I mean, even with like system P2W users or gas blowback rifle users or even just AEG users, there are still going to be people who try to cheat after you set up the proper rules and the proper chrono and the proper way to kind of go about the business of just setting everyone at a standard limit to make the game both fun and safe. However, with HPA, it's just it's more of an extreme difference than the other group. So there are different things you have to do. For example, when you're chronoing with an HPA gun, you have to chrono by joules, which you should be doing that with any gun anyway, but with HPA it's much easier to take advantage of people who chrono by FPS. You have to chrono by joules. You have to chrono with both the BB and the barrel that the person is going to play with. This is because if you have an HPA gun, you can test it yourself. If you don't, you're just going to have to trust me on this because I do own one. And every system is a little different too, but for the majority of them, it's true that if you go up in BB weights, or if you use a longer barrel, and your system is still able to properly volume it, it will properly volume it, which will result in higher joules. And if you don't know what joules are, and you're used to the term FPS being used, FPS is more or less a function of joules. Joules is the actual energy that the BB carries, aka why it hurts so much when it hits you, not FPS. So that's a common mistake people who don't know about the system will kind of just follow. So that's why I said chrono by joules as well, not FPS, because FPS can be very misleading, especially with HPA setups. Also, tourney locks on your FCU and your regulator. If you are a field owner that does not practice this, you're just very ignorant. Like, there's no other way to say it. Like, this is obvious. Make it so that players physically can't cheat unless they're taking these systems off and breaking rules. Have an RPS limit for all setups. So this is going directly to fields that are angry with Polar Stars shooting 40 rounds per second, for example. All three of us in this podcast, Ryan, Charlie, and myself, have built DSGs that shoot over 60 rounds a second. Like, it's not hard to do with an AEG either. It's just not as easy with an HPA setup. So if you want to restrict the RPS, restrict it for all setups. And this will cut down on the people kind of harping on you for singling out HPAs, and you still get the same effect. Actually enforcing these rules. It sounds dumb to say, but like, you will not. It's more common than it should be that you go to a field and you see refs that will chrono you in, and then not enforce any rules after the chrono when the game actually starts until a fight breaks out, or people are literally whining and threatening and swearing at each other in the middle of a CQB game because one kid's cheating the entire time. Not all fields are like this, but a lot of them are, and it's just something that you have to do. You have rules for a reason, enforce them. And then when people are cheating, kick the cheaters out. If they come back and cheat again, ban them from the field. It's like the spoon makes you fat argument. The Polar Star or HPA system itself isn't what's actually cheating. It's someone making a conscious decision to break these rules and cheat themselves. If you eliminate those bad people, there will no longer be a problem, even if you have people using HPA systems still in your in your field at your games. It's not the HPA system itself; it's the idiots using them. And I guess just to recap, as long as you kind of follow these standard rules, there's no way someone can possibly be on the field with a joule output in their system that is above field limits. As long as they chrono with the proper BB, with the proper system, with the proper barrel they will be using, and then you put locks on their reg and locks on their FCU, there's no physical way they can change their system and make it over the limit unless they cheat. And that's what these rules are for. It's to catch those people cheating and get rid of them so that you don't taint the entire feel or atmosphere of the HPA systems in themselves. It's just the cheaters that get sought out and taken away. And sorry if that was a little long of a rant, but it's something that's becoming much more popular in the airsoft world to talk about, so I figured it'd be worth weighing in on.
Yeah, it's a really good topic, and it's not necessarily, like you said, tech-related, but it's something that we can cover and talk about, because it is tech-related at the same time. It maybe not like a question and answer tech-related, but the topic itself is technical. It needs to be discussed by people that know what they're talking about in that topic. So, I don't really care about like the HPA versus AEG argument. They're both different systems. Go for it. I don't care. I don't care that if somebody uses a Polar Star and they get me out. I'm fine with that, as long as they're not cheating as they do it and they're not calling their hits, and then that's a different issue. But like, I don't like it when a Polar Star user, like this field I go to, Fallen Warriors Airsoft, pretty great field. I go there, and a lot of the Polar Star users are shooting over their joule limit because they don't understand what joule creep is, and so that's a huge problem. And then the most recent game I went to, they announced that they're not allowing any gun to shoot over 400 FPS because they're getting so many complaints, and their insurance is starting to, harp on them for it, so they're just dropping everything to 400 FPS. They're chronoing AEGs at 400 FPS, and they're making Polar Stars not unallowed to shoot over 1.5 joules. So, but that's so easy to get around with the joule creep concept by putting a .20 in it, absent-mindedly, because granted, a lot of people don't do it on purpose. Some absent-mindedly do it. So, yeah, some absent-mindedly do it, and that's okay. And that's kind of the field's fault, and kind of your fault at the same time, because you really need to know how your system works. But, so, like, a lot of guys are there to shoot above the joule limit, and they don't know it. And so I get lit up with a .36, and it hurts really bad. And so it just sucks. But my AEG can also joule creep, and they don't register me under joules. So my DSG joule creeps. It shoots 340 FPS on a 3-inch barrel. But that's easy to joule creep on, so I do sometimes. But I don't joule creep over the limit that's going to hurt somebody. So yeah, your argument is sound. Your debate is sound. I agree with all of it. That's how it should be ran, because it removes the most cheating opportunities that it can, and so that's what it needs to do.
So while I don't agree with banning the HPA system, I think obviously your solution to educating the fields and the field owners, the refs, admins, whoever, is obviously the better solution. I just want to point out that from a purely business perspective, it does make sense.
Yeah.
Since Polar Star users are more than likely going to have an AEG that they can use at the field, and I don't think that they're going to abandon the field just because Polar Stars were banned there. And the people who are going to be upset that they can't do that they can't use their Polar Star anymore, it's the people who are more likely to be upset are the people who are more likely to be cheating in the first place. So the people with the AEGs are going to have a more positive view of the field, even if the smaller minority of the Polar Star users have a slightly lower view of it.
Yeah, the only thing that I can add on to that with the whole business perspective thing is on the flip side, where this is a hobby, the Polar Star users are also the ones who are openly willing to spend more money on a hobby, aka more money on the field playing the hobby. So those are the customers the field, on a business perspective, really does not want to lose, because they're the ones who are more likely to spend their money going to the field and
but some people buy stuff from
than the annual.
Most people buy stuff from Airsoft, GI, e-bike, and the big sites. It's very rare that people buy from a store where it's marked up $20.
But who would you rather have coming in and out of your car shop annually? The guy who's driving a Toyota Camry, or the guy driving the Lamborghini? Obviously, the guy driving the Lamborghini is willing to spend money on the thing he likes, which is also involved with your store.
Well, like I said before, the people with the Polar Stars are probably going to have another AEG that they can play with.
That's also true.
I kind of like what Hollywood Sports Park is doing, and you guys might have heard about this. They have a night. They have like they outright ban Polar Stars from their field, with one exception. There is an HPA, like not an HPA only, but where HPA guns can come and play week. And so everybody's there with the Polar Stars, their SMPs, their, Hydras, and all their, Polar Star Jack setups. And they're running that setup, and they're all playing against each other. There's no AEG there unless the AEG user's like, okay, I want to be here, and I accept, the quote-unquote risks that are involved. So I'm not going to rage and all that stuff. But there's also an AEG week where no Polar Star users allowed to come at all. So it's, from a business standpoint, that may make a little bit, that may make sense, but I still don't like the idea of segregation. I don't think it's a great idea. I mean, sure, every now and again, could you have a Polar Star only match? Yeah, sure, why not? But I just don't see how segregation is better for your business than by, educating the business and doing all this stuff and then having everybody come together and play fair. And then granted, there are some AEG users who aren't very educated, they just think Polar Star users are cheaters all around, and they should just all go to hell. So that's their viewpoint. So there's no educating them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that segregation is definitely better than an outright ban, but I still don't agree with it, because, for example, I am an SMP owner, and I have my gun restricted to semi and 3-round burst, for example. My FPS is set at a solid 340 with 0.3 grams, and then I go and use 0.3 grams, so I don't jewel creep with it beyond that. I chrono that way, and I stay that way throughout the match. I have one of the fire-based regulators, so I built-in turning lock. I put a zip tie through it, and I keep a zip tie through it from like matches from months ago because I don't change the regulator setting. So I'm shooting under what some AEGs are shooting, and I would still be banned in that aspect because of fear that I'm going to cheat. So that's the part that I just don't like about it.
That's your point.
And it's like I build my own AEGs that shoot actually higher joules at 0.3 gram BB.
Well, the SMP, it has a fixed poppet, so it actually doesn't jewel creep as much as a Polar Star does.
Oh no, not nearly as much. Like if I put an Orga widebore in my SMP, for example, it might even get to the point where it's under-volumed, because it does not have the same air capacity that a Polar Star does.
Alright, so are we all done on that topic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted.
Yeah.
Alright.
Enough points.
I feel like that was a good I feel like that was a good discussion. I enjoyed that. A good thing to bring up too, because it's a hot topic nowadays. More people buy Polar Stars, more people are getting into the sport / hobby, so there's more controversy with that, and so it's a good thing to discuss. Charlie, do you have a question that you commonly get, or just something you want to address?
Yeah, just probably an inquiry I get more than anything. For like the past year, I've been getting an abnormally higher amount of MOSFET returns that have been listed as not working, but almost all of them that come back to me actually are working.
Interesting.
It's very, very strange.
Very strange.
So is that just like user incompatibility with like actually installing it correctly?
No, I have no idea. They'll install it and they'll claim it doesn't work. The wiring setup will, as far as I can tell, it checks out. They'll send like a cell phone picture or something. It's not ideal, obviously, but they'll return it to me and I'll test it and it'll be working. So I'm not sure what that's about. Maybe, I don't know if you guys had any ideas about that.
Huh. Yeah, I think I've only returned one of your MOSFETs ever, and that was like when you were first making them, and for some reason I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong, and I could have done something stupid wrong, and I don't, you might remember this. It was a while back on my old YouTube channel. I installed it on my G36. I had no idea what I was doing wrong. I segregated everything. I had like the contacts apart. I had everything ready to go, and I plug up the battery, and the motor would spin up. So I was really confused the whole time, and I didn't know what was going on. And as soon as I got back to you, it worked perfectly fine. And so it was obviously my fault, and I just don't know what's up. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. I haven't used any of your newer Nova MOSFETs yet, but I still have, I think, 2 of your older ones, and they're still working fine in both the builds that I put them in. So I'm just trying to think of how someone would I don't know. It's weird that they're reported as not working, and then you said most of the ones you get back when you test them, they
Yeah.
actually are working.
Yeah.
Now, do you test them by installing them in a gun, or do you just put them in like a circuit board and test the voltage going through
Both.
it, for example, or the current
Yeah,
going through
both.
it? I mean,
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
My theory is just that it's a short somehow between the I don't know, somehow between the positive charge and the gate wire. I don't really know how that will happen, but that's my best theory so far.
Because something might be an issue that I ran into, and it was installing your FET, and it wasn't an issue that was a result of you making the FET. It was just like I installed something a little different. I installed the MOSFET like I normally do, except I had the signal wire a little bit higher on the contact, and so whenever I closed the gearbox shell, that wire would touch the gearbox shell, and it would cause it to it would be a short, so it would automatically fire. And so I was like confused for a second. I was like, what is going on? So I took that and I noticed that. I was like, how did I miss that? And so I unsoldered it and soldered it back down to where it was lower, and it totally fixed the problem. So it could be something really silly like that, where they're just getting some odd short. But then again, you said you were getting pictures, but they were also kind of like cell phone pictures that weren't optimal. So just
Yeah.
another thing.
Oh, that's another thing to point out. To point out is that were the errors described as like a blown MOSFET where you plug in the battery, it just starts shooting, or
No,
just
it
nothing
starts
happens when they
shooting.
wire it up?
No, yeah, it's touch shooting.
Short.
Yeah, so that could have been. I'm assuming when you have so many issues like this, like some of them have to be user error, where like everyone thinks they're a tech and they're not. Like a couple of them were definitely installed wrong. A couple of them could have been this weird issue Ryan was having. But if you've been saying you have like an abnormally large, not large, but like more frequent amount of returns, I guess. I don't know if they would all be the user error or for example, a short opening up, but it is weird that like most of them are working perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Again.
I will say, just for the podcast sake and those who are listening, I've never ever had to return one of Charlie's MOSFETs.
Oh yeah, me neither. I don't mean to
except
down
that
talk you
one
in
that
the
I
first
got that was
podcast
kind of like a
you do.
beta run, and so it was my own fault even.
Yeah.
But in all the customer builds I've ever installed one of Charlie's MOSFETs in, I've never ever had one return on me. So that's one thing I will say. So
I
it's
have-
probably just user error, somebody installing it wrong, and so. That's just something to say for those listening. I don't want to draw any people away from buying Charlie's MOSFETs because they're awesome. You definitely want to pick one up.
I have one in my 416 right now, and I've used 6 others for customer guns. Not
I've
once
probably
I had-
used around 8 or 10. I can't remember. But I've never had one return.
And I like yours too, because at the time, I think they probably still are the cheapest ones I could get my hands on, and they're a lot more compact than the other ones in the market too.
Yeah,
so
they're compact, come with more wire.
at least your green fets were. At
Yeah,
the
the
time.
new
I like
ones are
those.
even smaller.
I haven't had a chance to buy
Just
one of those
watch
yet.
my channel, Ryan, and you'll see a review. So
Yeah, and then one other thing. I'm looking into designing a computerized MOSFET.
Ooh.
Yes, you told me about that a while back, but that was
Yeah,
that was like a long
school
time
caught up with all of that, and that was really lots of college applications and all that stuff took an incredible amount of time. So that was a delayed project. But what is a feature that you guys would like to see in a computerized MOSFET?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Hit me on the spot.
Actually,
Personally?
oh, you go. If you have one, you go.
Okay.
Okay, so I like everything BTC has going for it, but it needs to have more. I know you can always say it needs to have more and more and more, but two features I really want is with my terminology might be wrong. Ramping is when you have like the 3-round burst and you have full auto on top of it. So when you it taps it, it goes full auto, or not full auto, but 3-round burst. But if you hold on the trigger, it goes into full auto. Now the problem with BTC is that if you tap it, you hit 3-round burst, obviously. But there's a pause. I don't want that pause. That pause is so annoying. If you could fix that, and I'm certain you could, because Retro Arms did. But have that feature plus Bluetooth for my programming. That would be awesome. I would love a Bluetooth programming plus the trigger pulls.
Yeah, so I know
Bluetooth just ease of use, so that's me.
something that I personally would love to see. I was gonna point out the pause as well because I did recently do some research into the RetroArms processor unit they're making for their split gearboxes. I think they might fit the version 2 RetroArms gearboxes too, the normal ones, but if they do, they're designed for the RA style, which I know is a little slightly different than standard TM. However, something they did fix was there is no pause between the 3-round burst to full auto option, so that was something nice. I'd rather keep that trend going than keep the pause going. Also, I think you referred to ramping, and the way I'm familiar with ramping is through paintball. Even though I don't play paintball personally, I used to rent guns to play with friends, but I never actually bought my own marker. However, I know it's when you fire semi-auto within each semi-auto shot within a certain amount of time frame from each other, 5 in a row, and then it automatically goes to full auto.
Yeah, my ramping like that was probably the wrong word to use. It's ramping and another thing I get confused. Hold on, I have it right here. Ramping and burst auto hybrid.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the manual right now, and that's what I meant, not ramping. Thank you.
Does anyone ever actually use ramping in airsoft?
Ramping, I don't.
Ramping,
I don't.
I never have.
I flick a switch and I get a second fire option.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Bluetooth?
Oh, I'm all
that?
for the Bluetooth. I know that the newer Hydra and I think the Polarstar F1 are both trying to incorporate Bluetooth programming into the FCUs. If you could do it with a computerized MOSFET for AEGs, though, that would be really. I would be all for that because one, it's just kind of bringing it up to the top tier, I guess I could say. At the time when you would come out with these, assuming no one else goes beyond Bluetooth or doesn't get too popular, it would literally be the computerized MOSFET you want to put out, the F1, and the Hydra, which are both HPA systems, would be the only 3 things that have that compatibility. And I would definitely be willing to do that. I'd be willing to use that and market that because I think that's worth it, just to be able to take my phone out or take a tablet out and change the settings in my hand and then retest my gun instead of having to pull the manual out and do all the trigger clicks.
Yeah.
But even that, it's a really small thing you can make an improvement on. It's not necessarily adding another resettable fuse option or LiPo monitoring option. It's a very small thing, just making it more convenient. The only other thing I can really think of is probably told it yourself already, but within the limits of what you can build, try not to backtrack. Try to take all the advancements that have been made and build onto them if you can, because where you are coming in as a new product to the scene, everyone knows the Spectres, everyone knows the Chimeras. Those are the current day go-to computerized MOSFETs. RetroArms coming out with their own now, which is going to be more of the same, but some minor changes to it. So if you're if you're coming out with another computerized MOSFET, you have to kind of say, why is it worth buying yours over the Spectre or the Chimera? Because then even if the argument is, oh, well, there's always out of stock, well, now you have the RetroArms, which let's all assume, for sake of the argument, that they're in stock more often. So that's, I guess, what you'd have the Bluetooth thing going for you, which is, in my opinion, huge. And then try to combine the advances of both other MOSFETs, like everything the Spectre put forth, and then the fact that RA got rid of the timing space between the 3-round burst hybrid to full auto mode, for example, things like that.
Yeah. Also, a higher maximum voltage would be cooler. Just being able to run 18.5 volt would be just sick.
That would be, I don't know, what would the practical use of that be, though?
Nothing.
Yeah, there isn't any.
It'd be just so cool.
14.8 volt should be, not stressful on the system. However, I don't really see, a real use for, I guess, using something higher than that.
It'd be just cool.
Just to say, I got an 18-volt battery strapped to my stock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. What's your Polarstar on? A 7.4? Yeah.
Everything
in the system can actually handle an 18.5 except for the big capacitors.
Oh.
Those are the limiting factor. And those are marked at 16 volts max, but I can certainly experiment with how higher I can go without killing them
Well,
completely.
because I know.
I mean,
what is
18 volts is just kind of like a luxury. It's
there's,
just,
there's no practical use for 18-volt batteries in airsoft.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
what if because I don't have, honestly I forget with my 14.8 volt, but when a 14.8 volt is fully charged, what's the voltage it has? 16.8.
16.8.
Yeah, so I would say at a
Yeah.
very minimum, try to have 17 volts easily through the system without hampering it too much, and that should clear you of any issues. And be in excess for
Yeah.
most setups anyway, because most people use 7.4s or 11.
Yeah, and I don't think very many people use 14 volts that, they don't already know what they're doing with it. So, like, they understand that if something burns out on a 14 volt, more than likely it's their fault, not the gun's fault.
Oh yeah, well the 14.8 volt is solid. I'm just saying that 18.5 might not be feasible.
Yeah. Alright, so is that all we got, gentlemen?
I think so,
I
yeah.
think so.
Alrighty, well, this has been another exciting episode of Airsoft Tech Talk. This is episode 6. We've gone over quite a bit of our 45-minute time frame, but that's to be expected with another guest. This is a lot more fun, though. I enjoy this. The three people here, we have just the three-person discussion we have going here. We get a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different suggestions and just opinions and all that and different experiences going around. So it's a lot more fun, and I like it.
I like it too.
So I'm just
Yeah.
going to completely screw over our time limit of 45 minutes. That's just not going to be held up anymore.
We failed 3 episodes in a row.
These are uploaded on a low-quality video format and a relatively high-quality audio format. So, relatively, just because I have a limit of data per month. So I don't like to use up all that on weekly podcasts. So I'm doing the best we can here. But I enjoy the longer podcasts. If you guys enjoy it, tell us, because I feel like you guys do. The previous podcast got a lot of views really quick. So we'll keep it at this. Any closing statements you guys want to put in?
Not really. I mean, I personally enjoyed having Charlie as a guest today. Obviously, go through Ryan, and I'm hoping this can be more of a regular thing. I also like the 3 people as opposed to 2, and it gives us an excuse for going over the time limit because we did have a third person weigh in on everything this time.
Certainly.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for having me on the show. I did have a great time, and I want to tell the listeners that if they have any ideas for a computerized MOSFET that they want to see in the near future, then they should either contact you to tell me or email me directly at charlie@zcairsoft.com.
Certainly. Also, follow his Facebook page, Zardichar Airsoft, or is it Zardichar SC Airsoft? I can't remember.
It's just Zardichar Airsoft.
Okay, yeah, follow Zardichar Airsoft or like him on Facebook, and go to his YouTube page and subscribe to him. Alright, we will see you guys next time on episode 7.
Yep, see ya.